Earlier this week, I tweeted that I'd like to report that I'm surviving medical school, but I'm not really sure if I am or not. And so I'm going to explain that a little bit in this video. So the past 2 weeks, my classmates and I have been absolutely bombarded with like a lot of information. It's been overwhelming for all of us, but we are kind of chugging through. And so this week will be our last full week before our first block of exams. So basically, I was thinking these past couple of days about the massive amount of information that we're given. And so, as medical students, to essentially survive, you only need to pass your classes. It's not like in undergrad or high school where if you wanted to get where you wanted to go, you had to do really well. They just want us to pass. All of us are going to be doctors. But we all still have that inside us that we really want to do well. And so even though we're being bombarded with information, we're all kind of like, I am anyway, gasping for air, trying to keep up with all of it and trying really, really hard, knowing in the back of my mind that I really won't get every single little detail that we learn about. Speaking of those little details, there are a lot of them. And some of them really seem like they're going to be relevant. I think I talked a little bit in my last video about how it feels like some of the stuff we're learning, I don't just want to learn it for the test, but I'm like, well, I might see this as a physician someday in my patients, so I should at least make an attempt to be familiar with it. But then there are other small details that I'm not really sure we're going to use. Small details that I learned in my science courses in undergrad that I was hoping I would get to forget about, to be completely honest. I don't like to say ever that knowledge is useless because I firmly believe that every single piece of knowledge is useful in some way to someone. But that's just it, is how much of these little details are useful to me. And so I started to think about that, and I was getting kind of frustrated with all of the details that I would have to just cram inside my brain in this short amount of time. But then I started thinking back to undergrad and started thinking about all the basic little stuff that I learned back then that were seemingly useless, that I probably really won't use in my day-to-day life. And what I remembered was that even though those little details were ridiculously useless, they provided me with a perspective of the complexity of everything around me, basically. And maybe because my brain learned to understand that complexity, it was preparing me for this massive amount of information that I'm being presented with right now. And maybe this is also a test. So, maybe we don't have to understand the exact position that a certain enzyme will cleave at, and which enzyme it is inhibiting, or maybe we do, but maybe we won't have to remember every single one as doctors in all of our lives, but maybe a knowledge of the complexity of how all of this stuff works will provide us with some kind of perspective that will make us better able to handle whatever ridiculous thing is being presented to us, like, then. Maybe. For example, this past week we learned about a collection of like nerves around an artery right around here called the brachial plexus. And when we first went over the brachial plexus in lecture, we were all like, oh my god, this is so many details to understand. And then, we all went home and studied really hard the brachial plexus. And we came back the next couple days and we were like, hey, I think I'm starting to get this. I was anyway, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then, we got slammed with more complicated details that we have to remember. So, you didn't even have time to like bask in your glory of remembering certain other details before you have more to like memorize. So, I don't know how that was related to what I was saying before. I know. So, I guess my point is that, like, no, I don't know what my point is. I think I was gonna say something about how, like, use the brachial plexus as an example of, like, knowledge that can be beautiful even though it's really complicated, and how you can get excited when you kind of understand complicated things. Um, Maybe the important thing isn't that we remember every detail and complicated thing that we learn in our first semester of medical school, but maybe the important thing is that we try to, and in trying to, something changes in our brain that will make us better doctors. I hope so.